Evening. This is session 2, and I hope you can see my screen. Um, Let me check. Okay, so we'll start by last week we actually um, discussed on the introduction to business analysis and also the skills and the competencies and the role of a BA. So today we'll be looking at stakeholder. So we have to identify the stakeholder and we have to do the stakeholder identification, and afterward we have to do the investigation, the requirement elicitation and analysis, and evaluation, then gap analysis as well, and the document business requirements. And so the first thing we'll first discuss is the stakeholder identification, because now they've given you, once they place you on a project, so you have to identify the stakeholders. So like I said earlier or last week, that sometimes your BA manager or maybe your manager, whether it's a BA manager or the portfolio manager, they may send you an email or just let you know that you'll be working on this particular project. Then they will give you a contact that who you will be working with, probably maybe most likely the project manager. So once you have that project manager, then you have to contact the person, and you have to arrange, the project manager definitely will arrange a meeting. You have a chat about the project, what the project is all about, and then you can have the then you can discuss about the stakeholders. The project manager will let you know the stakeholders that are involved in that project, who you need to be speaking with. And one thing that one needs to note is the stakeholder analysis and management is a very crucial to the success of any project, because you'll be working with stakeholders and you need to be able to know who are the people that you'll be liaising with, who are the people that are going to give you the requirements. You need to get your requirements from them, so you need to be able to do the stakeholder. So that's why one of the first thing that you need to do is to do the stakeholder analysis. So once you have your project manager, then you contact your project manager and ask various questions about the SMEs, about the people that you need to speak with. Then you'll be able to know the contacts. And this stakeholder analysis needs to be done. You need to carry this out during the project inception. Like once they kick off the project, that's when you start your identification, because without knowing the people that you need to, your stakeholder, you cannot gather the requirements. So that's why it's the first thing one of the things that you need to do to make sure you know the people that you need to speak with. So, but how do you identify this? You need to make sure you get this from the project manager and your project team, because for this stakeholder, sometimes your project manager may identify some stakeholders, and also maybe some of your project team, like maybe the business change manager or the business change lead, we actually let you know the people that you need to speak with as well. And one thing, that once you identify your stakeholders, you have the list or the names of the stakeholder, you need to ensure that you always revisit this the stakeholder analysis during the project, because once you identify there's a stakeholder that has their interest is low, and during the project maybe it may change. So that's why once you identify your stakeholder, you need to make sure as once you are going through, as the project is progressing, you still need to be able to revisit. Do you still need this person? How do you prioritize, or maybe the weight that you are going to put on the stakeholder? So because, for example, one of the projects that I worked on, so during the project, when I first joined, they gave me a list of the stakeholders. So, but as we're gathering the requirements, we started identifying some other things. The discussion was going on. I think probably maybe about 3 months down the line, then we identified that there are some other people within the business that we need to I need to speak with. So we had, by the time that I spoke with them, they were key to the success of that project as well. So that is not only when you begin the project that you have all your stakeholders. So during the project, you may still identify some other stakeholders that will be involved in that project. And another thing is that as a BA, you can't just identify all the stakeholders by yourself. So sometimes the business change may have conversation or maybe meeting with other people, and the business change person may even identify some stakeholder for you, and they will give you the names, or probably maybe your project manager, or maybe even it may even be the administrator. So it could be anybody within your project team that will say, oh, actually we need to be speaking with this person because it's one of the stakeholders that we just identified. So you can also identify your stakeholder from your project team. And also when you're having conversation, even when you're now speaking with the stakeholders that you have, so some of the stakeholders may refer you to another business area saying, oh, you need to speak with Mr. Jones because he has stake in this particular project. So it's not just, so the essence is not just only at the beginning of the project that you actually identify your stakeholders. So you can identify as many stakeholders during the workshop, during the interview, and during the probably maybe during the project as the project progresses. So then we'll move on to now that you've identified your stakeholders, you have all the names, the people that you need to contact. So you need to analyze who are the stakeholders. How do you actually, because you have various levels, various powers that you can actually, put them. So there are some stakeholders that you need to really manage them very well. You need to actually keep them on your side. There are some people within the stakeholder, they have low interest in that project, and they may not be interested. And there are some people that they have high stake in that project that are actually keen on making sure that project is successful. So there are some people that have interest. I think I discussed this last week as well. There are some people that have interest. They have very high interest, but they don't really have any power to actually manipulate things or to actually influence that project. And there are some people that may have high power. They may have, very influential in the organization. They have the authority, but they don't have their interest. They may not even have any interest in that project, or it may be low. It may not be really high interest. So that's why you need to make sure you manage them very well. You have to manage your stakeholder. But regardless, even if the person does not really have any interest, or maybe low interest, and does not have power or high power or low power, no one should be ignored. No stakeholder should be ignored. You have to make sure you treat them fairly. You don't ignore anybody. But it's just that the way you manage them, that's the only way. You just have to say, okay, this person has high interest. Sorry. So it's just that you can say this person has high power, high interest, so I need to make sure whatever this person say, you keep that person satisfied, you keep that person on your side. And low power or low interest, you still make sure you inform them whatever they need to know, but it's just that you just have to manage it. So I can't really explain more than that. You just have to manage them. What's this align control? Okay, so once you identify your stakeholder, and one thing is that during the project, the person that even has maybe high interest and high power, as the project progresses, it may change. So it's not always static. Their interest or their power is not always static, because somebody else may even move from that project and move to another, maybe another department. So that means the person that has high power and high interest before may actually not, that project may not really be relevant to that person again. So it may just drop down to low interest and low power. So it changes. So that's why you need to make sure you manage this stakeholder analysis. You have to make sure you manage it as the project is progressing. You also make sure you sense check everything. Is it still all right since my project? Is this the person I still need to keep on my side, or maybe keep informed, or things like that. And also we look into the stakeholder. Once you have your stakeholder, there are some stakeholders, they have different responsibilities, and that's why you have for example, there are some stakeholders, probably maybe it's just the business case they need to approve, or maybe it's just only you have to use them to gather your requirements, or maybe there are some stakeholders you just need to review some documents together. So there are various things that they can do during the project. So it's not every one of them that actually going to say that you have to maybe document requirements or maybe review the requirements with. So there are so many things, there are so many activities that you can actually do during the project. So I mentioned this research chart to define the stakeholder involvement. So it's just about the roles and responsibilities of the stakeholder. So for example, if you have this chart, which is I think is related to project management, so you have like the BA. So that means the BA is responsible for gathering the requirements. So the project manager may be accountable for this gathering of requirements or business requirement documents, just roles and responsibility of the project team and the stakeholders as well. So although the project manager has the key responsibility of stakeholder management, but as a BA, you too have the responsibility of managing your stakeholder. So we just need to do it together. So then I will move on to investigation techniques. So now that you've identified your stakeholder, then you can begin to gather your requirements. So, but the first thing is that what is the purpose of the investigation? And the purpose of the investigation is to investigate the business situation. What are the problems or that trying to rectify? Or is there any area of concern that you need to look into, or you can use this opportunity to actually identify any weakness within the business or in the process or in the system? And also you can use this investigation to actually compile your requirements for the new system or maybe the changes as well. And during the investigation as well, you can use this investigation to identify the current functions or any features that need to be documented for the new system, or any problem with the current operation that needs to be addressed as well, or maybe any additional features that they need to build for the new project. So that's the purpose of the investigation. So it's just, in summary, it's for you to gather your requirements and to identify any problems or any gaps that needs to be addressed. And we have various types of techniques that can be used for this. So we have the research, we have shadowing, prototyping, scenario, questionnaire, workshop, and interviews. And these are the techniques that we're going to discuss today. So first one, I will start with the research. So for the research, how do you carry out your investigation by researching? For example, if we look at the case study, if we pick a case study of the let's say the GDPR project. So you've landed as a BA on this project, because the organization, most of them did not really have this requirement. So the requirement is on the website, on the EU regulation, the EU website. So you have to go on the internet to go to the the GDPR website to actually read the requirement. What are the requirements for the GDPR that the organization needs to comply with? So in this, that's one of the example of researching, because you have to research the requirements from the website or from the internet, and it could be probably maybe the organization is saying we want to procure a new HR system, but they've not really given you an idea of what the exact HR system that they need. They may just say, oh, probably maybe we just need HR system that will be able to do payroll and maybe have some, some functionalities. They may specify to you, but how do you actually identify, how do you actually get this information? You could go on the website, even prior to meeting the stakeholders. You can go on the website and just try to browse, read through, some HR system. What are the HR system that is out there? What are the the types of HR system that maybe has that same functionalities that they've interviewed you about? So at least by the time you are speaking with the stakeholder, you have an idea of what the system could do, or maybe the type of features that is out there. It's just for you to prepare yourself. So it's not just the research only. The research is not just for you to gather your requirements, but it just gives you heads up. It just makes you to prepare, so that at least by the time your stakeholder is saying they are talking to you, you'll be able to be aware of maybe what you need to do, or how you need to approach something, or maybe the type of question that you need to you need to ask. Because for example, for the GDPR, because the ICO website, that's the Information Commissioner, I think, office for the UK. So you could go on that website and say, okay, what are the RPA? What are the templates that is out there that you can use for information access requests? What are the things that needs to be done, for the organization to be compliant with the data protection regulation? Those are the information that you get. Then it will help you by the time you're carrying out your workshop or your interview with the stakeholder. So it's just for you it just helps to prepare. And so I'll move on to the shadowing. So you can use this as well to actually gather your requirement. Because because the requirement for shadowing is just, is just when the user is carrying out a particular task, and you are watching how they are doing it, you are looking at the step to step, that they are carrying out this particular task. From there, you can actually identify your requirements. You can actually identify some gaps in there as well. So it's another type of investigation that you can use to identify any problem, or to identify the requirements, or what needs to be done. Because the person the business user may be showing you what they actually do, and from there the person will be telling you, oh, actually, when we click on this particular button, we need it to be able to pop up, or we get this error message, we don't want to be getting this notification message, or these are the things that we need to, it's just showing you on the screen there, showing you how they do things or how they want it to be done. So that's the shadowing. So it's another form of gathering your requirements, and by the time they are telling you, you can be documenting it and say, okay, they need a black screen, they still want the existing system to remain the same, or they need an additional feature for this. You just another means of gathering your requirements. And and there's another one, which is prototyping. They usually use this when they're building like a system, basically, because it's more or less like building simulation of a process or a system. So it helps this particular techniques. It helps the stakeholder to actually it helps them thinking. Because sometimes when you show them, sometimes some of the stakeholders, they don't even know what they want, but they may give you an idea and say, oh, we want a system that will be able to do some automation of certain things, then you can go away with your technical team and say, oh, this is what they are saying they want to do. Then the technical team and yourself, they can mock up some things, just build up like a mock up of solution and say, okay, these are the things that we've just, based on the few things or few points that you've just mentioned to us, we've actually mock up something, then we'll walk you through. You can tell us which one you want or which one you don't want. It's just, for example, they can mock up something like maybe a website. If somebody said they want a website that will be able to do maybe automation or, automating some certain process or certain things, then the business, the BA and the technical team, you can arrange just a meeting to say, we've actually drafted up some things or mock up a solution or a system. Can we walk you through it? Then you can tell us if it actually fits what you want or maybe if it's not. And by the time you're walking them through, they'll be able to tell you, oh, I want this, or we don't want this, or this is exactly what we want, or maybe there are some of the steps, they may say they want everything, and they may say, actually, you need to add something to this particular area, or you need to include this or remove this one. So it just helps them thinking, because sometimes they don't actually know. Sometimes some people, they may not really know exactly what they want, but when you build up something like a prototype for them, it helps them to actually make up their mind and to make some decision as well on the prototyping. So for the prototyping, you use that for gathering and analyzing as well, analyzing the requirements and demonstrating what the solution, how the solution is going to be. So that's the essence of using the prototyping, but it's not like one it doesn't fit all the requirements, all the projects. So you have to determine the exact techniques that you have to use for a project. And also on the scenario as well. So that's more or less like when you have you are saying for example, probably maybe a particular scenario, you have an idea of what the project they want to do, then you set up a scenario saying, if we do this, just like the shadowing, although you are not actually watching it, but they will say, okay, if we actually do this, if I click on maybe a website, I should be able to get this. So it's more or less like a step-to-step, a step-by-step or sequence of tasks, how they want things to be carried out. So from there as well, you can actually use that to document your requirements. And also on the questionnaire, so the questionnaire is more or less like a survey. For example, one of the projects, let's say the GDPR projects, I remember I used this questionnaire, because the questionnaire actually, because you have, let's say, 300 staff that you want to actually identify how they manage or what type of data, the type like the data that they process, is it personal data or sensitive data, and it's not actually possible. It's not possible for you to meet with every one of them. So the only way you could do it in this scenario, because that's why I said you have to determine the technique that you need to use to gather your requirements. So in this case, because I have about 300 staff that I need to collect the information from. So what I did was to, draft a questionnaire, then send it out to various business areas saying, could you please complete this questionnaire? So in that questionnaire, we have maybe the name of the person, the business area, the types of personal data that you process, the purpose of the personal data, what do you use it for, things like that. And it's easy for me. So by the time then probably they need to send it by the end of the month. So collecting that, then I started analyzing the document. So, but that saved me a lot of time to start saying, I want to meet with about 50 people or 300 people. So the questionnaire will fit something that has to do with data, or something that has to do when you have to, analyze some data on the organization. But in this case, it's not actually data, it's GDPR, but because I have to link it back to how do we use this information. So I had to use a questionnaire for this particular project. But after even that, I still had to carry out, let's say, the interview with the head of the department. So it's not just limited to the questionnaire only, but it actually saved me some time to, to go around to all the offices and saying I want to interview people. So the questionnaire is more or less like a survey as well. And you have workshops, which we are going to discuss in detail, and we have interview as well. But the most important one thing that you just need to notice that is the BA that needs to determine the investigation technique that you want to use for the project, because the project manager will not determine that for you, that you have to use workshop or you have to use interview, or your BA manager will not advise you to say this is the technique that you need to use. So but you have to determine that, okay, this is the type of project I'm working on. How do I want to gather my requirements? What is the best technique for me to be able to use to actually gather my requirements, to liaise with my stakeholder, to get everything documented? So the BA, is the responsibility of the BA to determine the investigation technique that you need to use. And so we'll move on to the interview. So because I would say the most times we use the interview and workshop more, compared to others. So that's why I'm going to just focus on the interview and the workshops. So we'll first look at the interview. So for the interview, you need to identify who are the people that you need to even speak with in the first place. So then who do you need to speak with, why you need to speak with them, and what needs to be discussed, and when exactly do you need to to actually carry out this interview, and where. So that's why we have this question: who you need to speak with, why you need to speak with them, what you need to discuss with them, when do you need to carry out this interview, and where. And where you need to have this interview. So, and one of the things that you need to notice that when you are starting your interview, you need to start with the senior stakeholders, because the senior stakeholders will help you to identify the people that you need to speak with. For example, if the senior stakeholder, you have been assigned a project, and the director will be able to say, oh, actually, we want to implement a new finance application. So what you need to do, this is what we want. We want you to be able to process some of the payroll, or maybe the ledgers and the invoices. The person will just give you high-level information. But for example, the senior manager, the senior stakeholder will tell you, oh, you need to speak with the cashier, you need to speak with this person, maybe you need to speak with the accountant, you need to speak with the administrator because she uses it day to day. So it helps you to identify the people that you need to speak with, because, for example, if they give you a list of names and you just start with, for example, the administrator, or maybe the accountant, maybe those are not the right people that you need to speak with. But because the head of the department or the senior stakeholder will know the relevant people that are actually relevant to the success of that project. So that's why it's always advisable that when you want to carry out your interview, always start with the senior stakeholder, and you will know this by the list that you're going to be given, whether from your project manager or any of your project team, because you will know their role and their title. So you'll be able to identify whether this person is a senior stakeholder or not. So it's always advisable so that when you are carrying out your interview, you start with your senior stakeholder. And also when you are doing your interview, because the senior stakeholder, they give you like the context of the project, the overview and the problems, but they will not have time, to go into detail. So that's why they will probably maybe refer you to some people, like for example, let's say the cashier and the accountant. They will say, okay, you need to liaise with these people. But those are the people that will be able to give you the detailed requirement, because you actually need to, you don't need just the eye level or the overview. You need to understand the problem. You need to understand the detailed requirement, the detail of, of what you are actually doing, or the system that they actually require. So that's why you need to make sure you start with your senior stakeholder. And also, the senior stakeholder, like I said, they will direct you, the person will direct you to the right people, and the senior stakeholder will also help you to introduce you to other members, because sometimes you may find this, some people may not be aware of that project, despite the fact that you have their names. But when you speak with a senior stakeholder, the person may say, okay, actually, I'm going to introduce you to these people. This will be here, will be contacting you to gather the requirement because of the, new project that we discussed at the project board, or maybe at the team meeting. So now we have a BA that will be liaising with you. So just make sure that you give this person, this staff enough time. I mean, I'm referring to the BA now. Make sure you give enough maybe time whenever she contacts you for interview. Make sure you make up time for this person to be able to gather the requirement. So it helps when you start with a senior stakeholder. And also for you to be able to know, now you've already identified who are the people that you need to speak with. So we've mentioned about the senior stakeholders, and the rest. Then why you need to speak with them. So because for every stakeholder, there must be a reason why you are speaking with them. Is it that they have contribution to that? Is it something related to their team or to their manager, to their department or something? So there's always a reason, because when you are contacting maybe the stakeholder, they want to know the reason why you are contacting them. What for? What's the reason? What's the purpose? So you need to be able to let them know the purpose why you are contacting them. And also, you have the when. The when is just when you need to do the interview. And also the location, the where is also the location of the interview that you need to do. And so now that you've identified the people that you need to speak with, we've already know the who, why, when, and we need to move into the planning the interview, because those are the key things that you need to do for your interview. For your interview, you need to make sure you check the availability of the stakeholder you want to interview before scheduling the interview, because most times a lot of people make mistake by just putting in interview or maybe meeting invite into people's diary, and definitely, even if anybody do it for me, most times I don't usually like it as well, because I will expect you to actually check my diary, check my availability. Am I available at that time, or as somebody else, or do I have another meeting at that time? Because if you don't check the diary or the calendar of that person, that's why most organizations, they allow their calendar to be visible, except if it's like maybe the senior managers that probably maybe for some reason they may just keep it as private. But at least even if it's private, even if their calendar is hidden, you will see blocked out that the person is not available. So because it won't speak well of a BA that you just put in somebody, let's say meeting invite into somebody's calendar without actually checking, and the person will just decline and say, sorry, I'm not available. Because the stakeholder would have expected you that you check the availability, whether I'm available or not, before even putting anything in my calendar. And that's why it's always good to actually check the availability of the stakeholder before actually scheduling any interview. For example, if you want to schedule an interview for, let's say with maybe two people, and you send meeting invites and say, oh, we are meeting 10 o'clock next tomorrow, so time, you've even booked the room. without checking the calendar. One person may, or Mr. Hay may accept, probably may even accept that invite, and the other person declined. And like if you find out that, okay, even if you now contact the person and say, oh, sorry, you declined my meeting invite, then the person may turn around and say, sorry, I have another meeting booked at that time. So that means you have to now cancel the meeting all over again and say, oh, sorry, Mr. Hay, I have to cancel the meeting because this person is not available. But you would have saved, let me say, that mess, if you had planned. Check the availability of both Mr. A and Mr. B. What time are they available? Then you can plan it and say, just send meeting invite to them and say, oh, this is a meeting invite for this. Then it now depends on whether they want to attend or not, but at least they are both free at that time. So that's the essence of making sure you check their calendar before scheduling any interview, for the stakeholder. And one thing I usually do as well is most time I try to avoid Fridays, because some organization, you have a lot of people. Some people, they don't even want to, even if they are in the office, they don't really want to attend any meeting or any interview or workshop on the Friday. But I'm not saying one should not have any interview on Friday. I'm not saying one should not have any interview on any day, but you just have to, plan it properly. That's my own advice. I just try and make sure, because on a Monday, people will say, oh, they just come back from, weekend or maybe even long weekend, and they don't want to just have interview or go into meeting just first thing on Monday morning or even in the afternoon, because they want to actually check. They want to, catch up with their emails, and probably maybe they even, because every one of them will even have day-to-day job. So they want to make sure they are on top of their day-to-day activities then before they can now attend to other things. Despite the fact that the project may be fine, important as well, it will be definitely important as well, but the stakeholder may tell you, sorry, I have my day-to-day job, so I need to do something as well. I can't attend meeting day. So for me, I try to avoid Mondays if possible, except if there is no way I can avoid that Monday, then I may have to schedule something in for Monday. But most times I try to avoid Mondays and Fridays, and just because you want to make sure the stakeholder is interested in that interview, you have their buy-in, they are really, you engage with them properly, because it doesn't make sense if they are not really engaged properly. And because Friday everywhere, nobody wants to actually do interview or maybe workshop like that. So but you just have to make sure you plan it very well. It depends on the organization. You just have to make sure you plan the day properly. So that's the essence. And also, one of the key things that I know that a lot of people, let's say that I know actually got into trouble for, is like when you are sending out meeting invites, like the interview, and I think this is just normal etiquette anyway, but it's something that you need to apply when you are doing the interview. You actually need to include the agenda of the interview, because when you're sending out the meeting invites, you need to let the person know, saying, oh, we'll be discussing, or I'm gathering requirements on this also project. I want to know how this thing affects you, or I want to know probably maybe the problems you are facing. I will be discussing the current process that you are actually using at the moment, or maybe the types of process, or maybe the processes that your desired processes, just like a key point. It's not like long epistle, but it's just like a summary of what you would like, or bullet points. It could even be a bullet points of what you will be discussing at that interview, and that will actually help the interview, to be prepared, because it will help you as well. Because sometimes when you are asking the stakeholder some question, they will be like, they may have to think first before they actually respond to you. But if you have the agenda, if you send the agenda ahead, they would have prepared. Even if they need to print out some documents and bring to the interview for the interviewing, they would have done that. They would have prepared on their own and saying, oh, this person said we are going to discuss on processes, let me get this ready. This person said we are going to discuss on the renewal requirement. You know, the person would have even prepared, maybe jotted out some of their requirements that they want. So it's always helps as well. So which, and I think is normal etiquette for, you know, for everyone to be able to prepare the interview. And also, so that's for the planning of the interview. And we talked about the duration of the interview. Usually they usually advise that the interview should be, you know, within 30 minutes to 1 hour. It should not exceed 1 hour. And because the reason is that because, you know, you asking somebody a question and they are responding to you. Imagine talking, asking, like going for an interview, even when you go for an interview and they're asking you a question for more than 45 minutes, you will be bored, you will be, you know, you will be getting frustrated a bit and say, I think it's okay, it's getting too much. So that's why, you know, to make sure that we actually we engage properly with the interviewer, the interview, so it's always advisable that we should try to keep the interview to maximum of 1 hour. If you can do 45 minutes or 30 minutes, fine. But it should not exceed 1 hour because that would be too strenuous for somebody, you know, to sit just be answering question on the requirements. So the duration is also important. And so the location of the interview. So when you are carrying out your interview, it's always advisable that you should do it in the environment, in the stakeholders' environment, because it will help them to actually feel more comfortable and more confident as well. Fine, you may be in the same office, maybe different floors, but if you go to their, for example, if your stakeholder is on 8th floor and you're on 2nd floor, it won't be bad if you can get a meeting room or maybe where you're going to sit around the 8th floor, because the person, the stakeholder will be in his own environment. The person will feel more comfortable in his own or her environment. And also sometimes when they want to, probably maybe they may want to share some document, they can easily say, oh, let's walk up to my desk, let me show you some of the processes, or let me show you how the system works. So it's easier, so it's beneficial when you do the interview, you know, around where the stakeholder, their office is. So it's always good. But that doesn't mean that if you can't find the meeting room or any location around their floor that you cannot do it anywhere else. You can still do it, but it's just that the location also matters as well, because you can get a better result from the stakeholder, you know, because sometimes some people work in different locations, probably maybe London, for example, maybe King's Cross and Central London, and you may be one. So if you're not saying the stakeholder should come to King's Cross, so, but it would have been good, or it would be nice if, as a BA, you can travel down to Central London to meet the stakeholder and carry out the interview there. That would be better than saying the stakeholder should come to your own office, you know, to do the interview. So it's something that you just need to, you know, manage as well. And so the structure of the interview is also something that also very important as well. So when you are doing your interview, you have to set the scene, you know, the introduction, what exactly are you trying to achieve, and you start with, okay, this is the project, the project is about this. Then you can also do the body of the interview. Then you can discuss about the next steps of action that you need to carry out as well. So once you introduce the project, you ask the questions that you want to ask, then you can summarize what you've discussed and the next steps of action. And when you're conducting the interview, you need to make sure you need to take notes, because there's no how you are going to remember all these things, you know, without writing them down. But at the same time, the stakeholder, the person that you are interviewing, will not wait for you to be writing down. So you just need to make sure you write like the high level, the high level points that you can build up later on once after the interview. So, but it's always good to take a note with you, or maybe your laptop. You just write down some of those things, then you can build up on it later on. Then once after the interview, then you just need to make sure you summarize all those things and send it to the interview, or the person that you interview, your stakeholder, to play back what you've discussed and the next steps of action. So it's something that is always good. And the stakeholder can come back to you and say, actually, no, sorry, I made a mistake in that. This is what it's supposed to be. It's just like a sense check of what you've discussed, and it can validate the meeting notes that you've actually sent back to the stakeholder. And so the other one is the workshop. So the workshop, this is when you have like group of people together, and it's usually common as well for most projects when you are working on a project that involves several business areas. So which is different from the interview, because the interview could be one-to-one or maybe maximum of 2 people. But for the workshop is something that has to involve several people. And the first thing, you need to make sure you prepare for the workshop, because sometimes, and you have to be confident as well, to be able to carry out the workshop, because sometimes you may have people, maybe about 12 people or 20 people in a room, depending on how big the project is. Then you have to be able to, facilitate the workshop. And because for your workshop, and I know you've actually identified your stakeholders, you need to prepare for your workshop. You make sure that the venue, you get a venue that you need to use before you even send out your meeting invite. Because if you cannot get a location for the workshop or a meeting room that you're going to use for the workshop, there's no point of sending out the meeting invite to people, because it could be that's just my own advice. So you make sure you get the venue first before the location or the meeting room, before you send out the meeting invite. Because imagine you send out meeting invites to 20 people to attend a workshop at 2 o'clock, and you've not found any room, and you fixed the dates. Then later on, you've tried all your best after sending out the meeting invite to people. Then you've tried your best to get a meeting room, and you could not, and you had to cancel the meeting invite. How will it sound? Not professional. No, not good. So that's why I will advise that make sure you get a venue first before sending out. Then you can include the location, the location of the meeting, of the workshop. You can include it in the meeting invite that you're going to send out. So that is always, I think it's professional that way to do. So make sure you get the venue that will be fit for that purpose as well, because there's no point as well getting a small room that will not be able to contain 20 people. I know these are the things that normal thing, but it's always cause some setback if it's not properly planned. So that's why I'm just trying to say some of these things as well. And for your workshop as well, you need to make sure you have your necessary things in place. And most times you need your flip chart. You may need even if you're not going to use it, get it, make sure you have it in that room where you are having a workshop. Make sure you have your flip chart, because somebody may say it and you want to write it down. So it's always good to have your flip charts, and you have sticky post-it notes, sticky notes, you have it available. Even if you're not going to use it, make sure you have it as well. You have pens available. Some people, you may think everybody will come to the meeting room with their pens, but if you have a spare pens, you have, like, maybe you get the pens as well as part of the materials that you're going to use. It will help, because For example, you have about 18 people and only 10 people are pens, and they didn't even know that they are going to write. So that means you have to go out, or they have to go out of that workshop, or go to maybe to go to the stationery cupboard to go and get that. So, but if you prepare very well, you have all those things in place. They don't even need to go anywhere. They just grab the pens and say, oh, I don't have a pen. Can I grab one pen? One pen, and that's it. So that's why I know these are little things, but it matters. So your post-it notes, your pen, for workshop, you need to have all these things in place, because definitely some people will make use of it. They will need it. And also, although most of the works, it's not all the rooms that has board. So that's why if you have your flip chart, it will also help you, and you know, for the if you need to write anything. And also, you have to, you know, definitely we've mentioned about the identifying the stakeholders to invite for the workshop. So likewise, the way you for the interview, or for the interviewing process as well, you have to do the same thing. Make sure every one of them attend or add that as well, because you know, before you can send out invites, like I said earlier, you have to check the availability, because there's no point scheduling an interview, a workshop, that you need some key people in there, maybe about 20 people, and only 5 people, you know, accepted. So that means you will end up canceling that workshop. So that's why it's always advisable. So you can just, because Outlook is there, you can just add all the names of the people that you want to invite for the interview, add them to your Outlook, and just check the time that most of them are free. Just check their time on the Outlook. Outlook will help you to be able to do that. You check the availability time, the free time, then you just stick the time in there. So it helps. And also, when you are doing the interview, I will advise, the workshop, sorry. When you're doing the workshop, I will advise you should give at least, let's say, minimum of 5 days, working days. That's what I will advise. Because this involves several people. And some people, they may have to travel from, maybe another location, or they may have to, maybe they're on holiday or something. So at least if we give them 5 days notice, they'll be able to prepare for this, because there's no point of saying you want to have workshop tomorrow. It doesn't really sound well. So, but if you give them like 5, even if you know the date ahead, you can give 2 weeks notice. You just send a reminder before that day, but at least don't do workshop like 2 days notice or 3 days notice. Is not that good, but at least I would recommend that you give at least maybe like 5 days, at least 5 days notice, you know, before the workshop. You can send them the invites like 5 days before the workshop, so that will help as well. And also, not to forget, you need to also include the agenda and the the introduction of the workshop in the meeting invite, so that at least all of them will be aware of what you are going to be discussing, and they will be able to contribute as necessary as well. And so, and for the workshop, definitely is the responsibility of the BA to facilitate. No other person is going to facilitate. Is the BA, that is, because you own that process. You will be, facilitating the workshop. You will be conducting the question and answer if necessary. Is the responsibility of the BA. So that's why, and one of the things that you need to also determine is the technique that you're going to use for your workshop as well. Because for the workshop, you have different techniques as well. So you have the brainstorming, or you have the post-it notes, or maybe the one that you have to break them out into groups, which we are going to discuss maybe in a few minutes. So you have to determine that as well. You have to decide what techniques you want to use for your workshop, because these are the means that you're going to use to gather your requirements. So it's something that you need to also work on. And the duration of the workshop, definitely the workshop could be more than 1 hour. But if it's something that is going to be like, for example, maybe like more than 90 minutes, it's always advisable that you need to, let them have a break For example, if the workshop is going to take 3 or 4 hours, so you want them to have a break, like maybe 90, after first 90 minutes, they can have a break, like a tea break, maybe 30 minutes or 20 minutes, depending on the agenda of the day. Then after the break, you resume back again, you resume for your workshop, continue your requirement gathering and the workshop. So the workshop is not limited to 1 hour. So it could be 3, 4 hours, but definitely you'll have a break in between just for them to be able to relax and, stretch their legs or have tea or coffee break as well. So, another thing that you need to consider is that when you are doing your workshop, you need to consider, because like I said, some people if you have people from different locations, so some people will travel from different locations. So when you are scheduling the workshop, for example, you have a workshop in London, and you have some of your staff, stakeholders that will be coming from Cambridge. So you need to, plan the workshop probably maybe to start at 11. That means you give them enough time, the people that will be traveling, because you would have known before the workshop date, saying some people are coming from other locations. So by then you would have put that into consideration when you are doing the agenda or sending out the meeting invite. So now you have some people coming from Cambridge and you have some people coming from Oxford into London. So that means you say, okay, how long does it take them to, even if they're going to drive or take train? So let's say 2 hours. So if they leave their home, probably maybe 7:30, 8:30. So by 10 they should be in London. So you can schedule the workshop till 11. So then you can have maybe 11 to 2 or maybe 11 to 3, depending on the duration of the workshop. Then you can schedule that. Then you ensure that you also finish on time as well, because you have to consider people that needs to travel. So, but if it's something that everyone is just within the London, then you can schedule probably maybe 10 to 12, 10 or, depending on the time. So you just need to consider the location, the people that travel as well for this workshop. So it's one of the key things, that because some people give feedback and say, oh, sorry, the facilitator did not consider us because we have to travel, or they may even tell you that, sorry, I have to leave because I'm still traveling far, I'm still traveling back home, or it's still going to take me about 3 hours to travel back. So those are the things that you need to consider when you are having your workshop, or consider as well. And so then the structure of the workshop and the techniques you use, we are going to discuss that now. So for the workshop techniques, so like I said, you will be the one. So depending on the project, then you have to decide what technique do you think it will suit that particular project. So for example, for the brainstorming is where you have, definitely you have either your board or your flip charts. Then you may ask a question. For example, let's say we want to start. I don't even have any information on this project. They just said, oh, they want to get a new application. Then I may start with, okay, they will do the introduction. That is normal thing, when you are having a workshop, everyone would introduce themselves. Then I may start, oh, the purpose of this project is for us to get a new accounting system, or a new intranet, or maybe a new documents platform or something like that. So let's just put it that way. And I may start with, could you tell me what you use this system for? Then people will start calling out and say, oh, we use this to document, we use this to put to send things to maybe to clients. People will start giving you ideas. They start calling out all the things that you're, so you will just be writing it down. So you will be the one to be writing it down. That is why you need that flip chart. You may be thinking, oh, but I can be writing it on my laptop. The reason why the flip chart is necessary, or the board is necessary, is that when you are writing it down, everybody in the room will be seeing it, and even that may even help them to think as well. Other people in the room may be thinking, oh, actually, you need to add this as well. Oh, you need to include this as well, because as they're saying it, it will help them to think. So that's why we use board, the whiteboard, or you use the flip chart, depending on the, the room, the setting of the workshop, the room. So laptop, you cannot use laptop at that particular point when you are using when you are doing the workshop, carrying out your workshop. You cannot use the laptop to be documenting all those ideas that are calling out to you. So you use your board. And during this time as well, there may be, you may ask another question and saying, could you tell me the problems that you are facing on this current application that you are using? They will start calling out, people will start saying, oh, it's very slow, it's not user friendly. They will be calling out all their points to you. But it is your responsibility at that time for the brainstorming session. It is your responsibility to write it out. They will just be calling it out for you, but then you will be writing it down. So that's just the brainstorming. So, but you will be the one that will raise the first question or the idea, or whether you are doing problem first, whether you want to get the features, or you want to say what are the things that you need. So you are the one that is going to determine that before they start responding to you. So that's just the brainstorming. So that is the idea of the brainstorming. And so for the brainwriting, it's just let me say the other way around. So the brainwriting is that they will be writing it down. You may say, oh, everyone, could you write the problems that you are facing, or the problem that you are facing on this new, existing application? So they will be writing it down on a paper. So by the time, once they finish writing it out, then they will just put it probably maybe in the middle of the table. So that is the brainwriting. So they will not be shouting it as I suppose the brainstorming, they will be shouting it out to you, will be writing down. But for the brainwriting, they will be the one to write it down. Then everybody will put it in the middle of the table. And even by them putting it in the middle of the table, it will help other people can read it as well. Other people's comment, and they will be like, okay, actually, we actually experienced this as well. And they will be, it's just helps to collaborate together. So that is the brainwriting. So it's just for you to understand what you need to do. What each of these technique means. Then you can decide. And the round robin is you asking them question as well. So you can say something, then each person will have to say their own in turn. You'll be saying, oh, can you tell me the problem that you're facing? So maybe accounting department will say their own, HR team will say is or own. So it's just like turn by turn. People will be giving you their own responses turn by turn. So that's the brain or round robin. And post-it exercise, this is where people, like for example, you may say, could you write the problem that you're facing, or the features that you want, or your requirements for a new system. Then you use the sticky notes. So people will be writing down on the sticky note. They can write as many as they want. But the rule is that they have to write each requirement on each sticky note. So for example, I want a blue background. It will be on one sticky note. We want user-friendly system. It will be on sticky notes. So it will be on one each. So, and what they will do, so it will be each point on each sticky note. And what they will do is just that they will place it where you have asked them to put, probably maybe on a board or on the wall. Everyone will just go and stick it. For example, you may have a section, maybe on the board you may say, or on this left-hand side, pull the problems, stick all the problems that you actually having with the existing system. Can you stick it to this left-hand side? Then you can say on this right-hand side, the new requirements that you want, can you stick it there? Then you can say, okay, this front, can you put it, it's just that. So everyone will just be walking around, putting their own sticky notes as well. Then at the end of the session, once they finish, probably you can give them probably 15 minutes or 20 minutes, depending on how you want to actually plan it, then everyone will now come together. You now start looking at it one by one. But what you would have done is that you've actually grouped all the problems in one place. You've grouped all the the new requirements in one place. You've actually teamed it separately, so it's easier. So when you are actually discussing it, then you can move to the problem and say, now everyone, you've written your new requirements, so let's start. This person has written that, okay, they need a user-friendly. They'll say yes, okay. Another person, so you just be reading out the requirements. And, from reading it out as well, people may say, oh, actually, I've missed one. I need to quickly write something. Then they can even include their own requirements, as you are talking. So it's just another exercise of gathering your requirements. And what you just do at the end of the day is either you take the picture of the sticky notes, or you gather all these sticky notes together, then you can take it away and you can now use it to document your requirement, because they've now given you the requirement on the wall or on the board. So it could be 100 sticky notes depending on the project, depending on the requirement. But it helps you to build up on this because they've given you all the requirements. You just need to take it away. And because they are not going to take the sticky notes away, it's your property. So you just take it away and use it to document your requirements in your office, maybe the next day or 2 days, as long as it takes you. That's how the post-it notes. So that's how that works. And also the other one is the breakout groups. So the breakout groups is where you actually divide, the stakeholders, the attendees. You group them into probably maybe like 2 5s or 4s, depending on the number of people that are actually attending the workshop. Then you can say, oh, could you please write the problems, definitely we are dealing with requirements. Could you write the requirements that you actually want for this new system? Then they will collaborate as a group. So it's not different from this individual tasks that we've actually mentioned earlier, like the brainstorming, the brainwriting, the post-it note, which they actually carried it out as individual. So the breakout is, collaborating together as a group. So they will be discussing this requirement and say, oh, we need this, we need this. So it's just doing things together in group. And at the end of the day, they will still give you, then maybe after 15 minutes or depending on the time, you can say, okay, now group A, could you tell me all your requirements? Then they will be reading it out to you saying, we've actually documented, we want the new system to be flexible or to allow multi-users, or maybe to be the response time should be this. They will be giving you listing, calling it out to you. So, but as a group. So that's the breakout one. Then also there's another one, the stepwise requirements is just about asking why do we need it, So it's just a way of identifying gathering the requirements as well, or maybe identify the problem. Why do we need this? What are we using for? Until you actually nail down what you want to, what you are actually after. So that's so you can read up on that as well. So, and another thing is that during the workshop, you can gather your requirements. It's not just only identifying problems. During your workshop, you can use it to gather requirements. You can discuss about the problem, and you can also know the current state of things. And even sometimes during the workshop, you can map the current process and to be processed. You can do all your work, in a workshop. So it's not just only gathering the requirements, because you can discuss what are the process what process are you using at the moment. Then they will be telling you this, as they are telling you, you just be using a marker to draw it on the board. And by the time you even map it on the board, they may say, oh, actually no, finance needs to approve the document or the invoice before it's passed down to HR. So from there you can map out. So you can map out your process in there, and you can now say, oh, okay, could you tell me how you want the new process to work, or how you want the new system to work? then you can even document your to-be process while at the workshop. So it's not just only gathering, requirements. You can actually use it to map your process, discuss the problem, identify the gaps, and any other thing, and whatever thing that you want to document, or maybe you want to do relating to your requirements and to the project. So you can actually discuss it. And well, one thing is that you need to also ask questions and understand, like when people are giving your requirements, you need to understand the reason why they want that particular requirement, because they may say, oh, we want 20 users to be able to use the application at the same time. I may say, okay, why exactly do you want 20 concurrent users? Then they can explain to me and say, this is the reason, or because we have maybe 200 staff and we have 50 staff within the finance department, and there's possibility that at least 20 people will be using the system. It's just for you to be able to understand the problem and the reason why they're asking for the requirements as well. So it's good. And also, once you finish gathering, once you gather your requirements, you now need to follow up with a workshop. You thank every one of them. Then at the end of the day, you summarize the workshop, what you've discussed at the workshop, and then you send it just like the way you would have done for the interview as well. Then you can say, okay, not on that day, definitely, but definitely probably maybe the next day, if it's still fresh in your memory, you can say, oh, we've actually discussed about the problems, the new requirements. It's not possible, just to let you know, it's not possible for you to list all those things that you discussed. Like, for example, if they actually identify about 50 requirements, it's not possible for you to summarize it in that follow-up email. But you can just say, we've actually discussed on the new requirements, we've discussed on the problem, we've identified some gaps, and we've also mapped to be processed. But the next step of action is for me, I will document these requirements that I've gathered from you at the workshop 2 days ago or yesterday, and I'll be sending it out to you in 2 weeks' time for you to review and validate. And if you have any comments, you can come back to me, but you still have any question, you can still come back to me. So it's just for you to actually, like a follow-up email saying, these are the things that we've discussed, and this is what you are going to do, so that it will not just be, oh, you just conducted a workshop and they don't even know what is going to happen, what is going to happen with the workshop that they have. So that's why it's always good to just follow up, to keep them informed. Yeah, just to use that word, to keep them informed and to know, what you are going to do with the with the workshop and the time they've spent with you. So that's the essence of gathering your essence of the follow-up email. And I think now that you've now gathered your requirements, you have all the information that you need at the moment, and all you need now is just to, all you need to do now is now to go and document it. So the next session will be on documenting your requirement, because now you carried out the elicitation by different techniques, by using your workshop or your interview, depending on the technique that you use. Then you can now go away and document your requirements, which you don't really need any stakeholder at the moment. You have to go away. It may take you 2 weeks. It depends on the project. Yeah, it depends on the project plan. It could take you 3 weeks to document this. So probably maybe next week we are going to discuss on how you are going to document your requirements and the other steps that you need to carry out as well before you actually have that sign off. And I think that's all from me for today. So I'm open to question if you have any question. So if I go back to one of the questions that I have here, says, do you advise we should do you advise we should always use workshop technique to confirm? Not necessarily. It depends on what you are actually, the project that you are doing. So that's why I said you will be the one to actually decide, because it depends on the scale of the project and the type of the project. So if it's something that has to do with just 6 people, you can use your probably just the interview method, one-to-one interview, to interview all the stakeholders and gather your requirements. And once you do that, then you can also send it back to them to validate the requirements. So for the workshop as well, so once you gather the requirements from the workshop, you are going to go away to document this. Then you need to send the document out to the various stakeholders that you know that need to review those requirements. Then they will be able to validate that for you. So it's not the workshop that you use to validate the requirements, but it's just a means of gathering that you can use, the technique that you can use to, to gather your requirements. So that is what you use the workshop for. When you have more than a lot of people, that stakeholders, then you can use it to bring them together to get all your requirements from them. But I've confirmed that the technique. So now, not all the time you use the workshop. And probably was checking the room are equipped with tools to allow workshop. Yes, that is correct. Yeah. Okay. So yes, that is correct. You need to always make sure you check the room are equipped with the tools. So definitely. So because if you have different participants from, like, for example, maybe another location or another maybe country, depending on the location, even it could be King Cross and London Bridge, for example. Let's say the offices are just miles apart. So they may, if you have a video conferencing, technology in one of your meeting rooms, you can use that as well. So that other people, instead of traveling down, they can just use that to connect and join the workshop. So that is why you need to make sure you always check. Make sure you prepare it's part of your planning, it's part of your preparation for the workshop, to make sure all the things that you're going to need, because it wouldn't be professional and sounds nice when you've actually sent out probably maybe Skype meeting invites, that people can join via Skype as well, Skype for Business, and you get to the meeting room, you could not connect. You could not even have internet, you don't even have internet in that particular meeting room. That means that workshop is being flawed because you did not check properly. It could even be the sounds, because what I do most times, whenever I want to carry out a workshop, I go to the meeting room, try to check the meeting room that I'm going to select, whether it has a screen or not. Because if it does not have a screen, that means I may not be able to, do the video conferencing that people can actually, other people in the room can see the people talking. So that means, or I may not even be able to present. So whenever I want to carry out workshop, I make sure all the things I'm going to need are in place, and because I can walk up to the meeting rooms and check, room 238 or to room 207 has a screen. So if I'm booking the room, if I'm booking the meeting room, I know I'm going to select meeting or room 207, or I'm going to ask for that room, because I know the room has a screen and it has telephone, or it has all the things I'm going to need, because it's not all the meeting rooms that has the same facility depending on the organization. So that's why you need to make sure you prepare. That's why I was stressing it that time, that you need to make sure you prepare. Although it may sound simple and normal thing to do, but sometimes we forget these things and it messes us around when we make the mistake, because people will be like, but you're supposed to have checked anyway. That means other people will not be able to attend. So that's a good point. And also, and I think there's one message about when do you stop accepting a change to requirement in order to avoid scope creep, especially when we have deadlines. Okay, so when you have a requirement, one thing is that depending on the project plan, is the project plan that will actually determine when you are going to stop. You are not going to stop accepting a requirement, because I can, okay, for example, let me, one of the projects that I think I worked on a few months ago, we have the deadline, I think, to actually implement that system was January 1st or so. So I've been documenting the requirements since previous year, let's say since last year. Then we identify that, oh, we've actually missed one of the requirements, or the one of the stakeholders said, oh, we need to have this as well. But because with the technical team, so we already have a slot that we need, that the project team needs to send a requirement in by 20, let's say by 20th of November, for us to have a release date for January 1st. So what we've done is that we baseline those requirements, and we get approved. We got an approval. It was signed off. Then I sent it out to the technical team for us to make sure we meet the deadlines, because the technical team, they will have their own plan as well when they want to have a deployment, how long it is going to take the developers to work, or even if it's the supplier, because you have a project plan in place. Then the new requirement, I think another requirement now came in I think around probably maybe late December. But it was already late, and there was no way I could include that in what I've already sent in November. So what I did was just to raise, like a change request saying, oh, actually we need this functionality. This is what we need. So it was like a minor release, but it was part of a change request. So I did not ignore the requirements. I see, gather the requirement, the new requirement, but it's just that you've already baselined a particular requirement, like the first one. Then if you have a new requirement that they've just given to you, if the requirement is necessary and is a must, you need to raise a change request for it. Then it can follow the normal process that is supposed that each organization have their own change process. Then you can say, okay, the change request, it needs to be approved as well. You need to go through approval process as well, saying, oh, is this actually necessary? Because there are some requirements that you may think, oh, actually, no, we can do without it. We don't need it. So, but there are some requirements they will say, oh, anyhow, it's going to be a minor release. We don't mind if it's being released in March. That's fine by us. Then you still need to go through the the sign off, the approval. Then you can send it to the technical team to deploy. So it could be part of the minor release. So you can see have that. When are we going to touch on the process mapping? Yeah, the process mapping, probably maybe we are going to do that after once we are documenting our requirements, because for us to be able to have all the documentation in place, we need to do the process map of the current process and to be processed. So it could be next week or 2 weeks time. So depending on how far we go on that. So we are going to do process mapping, but not today. I mean, there's a question here. When we are gathering our requirements, should we gather them from all the service area that is involved in the project? Definitely. If your project actually involves several business areas, you need to gather your requirements from those areas. Because, for example, if it involves, let's say, finance, HR, facilities, maybe technical team, you cannot ignore just the technical team or the HR. You cannot leave any of the business area out, because they have a requirement, and you've been informed that they have a requirement. They are part of the, the project. So you need to gather your requirement for all the business area, because finance will not be able to speak for HR. HR cannot speak for the finance requirement. So that's why once you have all your stakeholders, you need to speak with all your stakeholders. So to gather your requirement. So it could be that what they're going to tell you may be the same requirements, but you still have to, liaise with them and say, okay, I'm working on this project. I've been informed that you are one of the stakeholders, and I would like to gather your requirements for this project, And it could be the same thing with other teams, but you still have to, because the person may say, oh, we've not, as the project started, because we've not actually contacted them. So it's not in a nutshell. you have to speak with all the relevant stakeholders when you're gathering your requirements. So is it possible to use more than one technique in the workshop to gather requirement? Yes. It now depends on how you want to manage it, because you should be able to manage it properly. Because it's possible, you said you want to identify the problems. So different people may have different opinions than what they have. So you can use post-it notes for that. And once you probably, maybe if you're saying the functionalities of a new system, you can actually use breakouts. So you can use more than one technique. So it just depends on how you can manage it. So you are the one that is going to determine that, because you don't want to mix things up, but you can use more than one technique. So that depends on how confident you are to be able to manage that process. So requirements are gathered from stakeholder. Remember the user. Yes. So when I say stakeholder, because your user is your stakeholder. So it could be senior user, it could be end user, it could be admin. So your user, like if I say a business user, the person is still your stakeholder. So it now depends on who are the stakeholders that you need to speak with. So the stakeholder is not just always the senior managers or the senior people. It could be probably maybe the administrator, because probably maybe it's the person that is using the system day to day. And it may even be this because of that person they're actually implementing the project. So the user of the system is also a stakeholder. So is there a standard way to analyze stakeholder? Well, if you're analyzing your stakeholder, so if they give you, because you will be able to do this also with your project manager, because the project manager, one of the roles of the project manager is to manage the stakeholders as well. So this person will be able to advise you as well, to say, actually, the HR director, or maybe this Mr. Jones in HR has high interest in this project and also very powerful. So your project manager will advise you. So because you may not know except somebody tells you. So once you have the information, once during the project team, because you will be involved in your project team as well. You'll be having several conversations on the project. From there, you'll be able to analyze, oh, this person in HR, Mr. Jones or Mrs. Janet is high stakeholder. You'll be able to analyze it from there, and you can speak with your manager or your project manager as well. They will be able to advise you and say, you need to be very careful of this person. This department is very crucial for the success of this project, so you need to manage this. So there are several ways that you can analyze your stakeholders. From experience, what's the biggest challenge faced by? So yeah, from experience, the biggest challenge faced by BA in an organization, that's a tricky one. So because as a BA, I can't really say this is the biggest challenge, because you have various challenges that you face in an organization. It could be the stakeholder, because most times it's always the stakeholder. Maybe when you have if you don't have a buy-in from some stakeholder, so I would say from that it could be but I cannot say it's the biggest, but definitely it's one of the main challenges that a BA usually face in any organization, is the stakeholders management, and and how to manage your stakeholder, because you have various people with different character, different opinion. So I cannot really place, probably maybe that's the biggest one, but definitely stakeholder management is a key one. You said talking about process mapping. Talking about process mapping, are we going to use Visio? Yeah, if I see that. Yeah, are we going to have tools? Yes, for your process mapping, we are going to be using Microsoft Visio to actually do that. So I will be, demonstrating, during the demo on that for you on the screen, but you have to download, you have to download or maybe get the software on your own laptop or your computer system to be able to practice on your own. But I'll be using MS Visio to demo to you how you do your mapping, how you map your process. You identify the stakeholder if you are new to the project as a BA. Yeah, because that happened to me few last year as well when I joined a new project. So once you join a project, you have a project manager, and definitely there will be an existing project team, even if the project has been ongoing for maybe 3 months before you join, or depending on how long it has been in existence for. But your project manager is in charge of the project. The project manager will give you the contact list, your stakeholders will give you the names of all your stakeholders, the people that you need to be speaking with. And during the project team as well, you will also get the names of your stakeholders and the people that you need to liaise with on the project to gather your requirements or to document or to get the information. So from your project manager and your project team, you will have all your stakeholders, the list of your stakeholders. So absolutely, you can apply jobs in any industry. I think I mentioned that in the first presentation we had last week. So once you have the basic skills of a BA, you can, but it's just that if you have, like, for example, maybe financial background or accounting background, and if they have a project in financial industry, you may have a better advantage, over other people that does not have any background on finance or accounting. So that's just the only. But if you have a basic skills, you can work in any industry. You can work in any industry. Yes. Yeah, Bisagi, yes, you can use that for process mapping as well. Yeah, I think I've downloaded that once, the free one, so you can use that. Yeah. Yes. So for your Visio, for your process mapping, you can use Bisagi as well. So yeah. Yeah. Because I've used that before anyway, so you can use it to practice. But if you actually get into the market, into any organization for any role, so they will have it. They usually use Visio anyway. So, but you have the software, the application that you're going to use. So it's just for you to be able to practice it. Probably if you have not used Visio before, so it's just for you to be able to use to practice on your own. So. Yeah. So the essence is just to be able to map the process regardless of whether it's Visio or beside it. So it doesn't really matter. So yeah, that's fine. So if you're introduced to a project that is ongoing and you see a problem, so it depends on the problem that you see. So that's the question from Hennes, saying if you are introduced to a project that is ongoing and you see a problem, what do you do? So that question is not really clear. So is it problem on the requirements or problem on the project? Yeah, so for the problem on the project, so if it's problem on the project, because it's not, as a BA, it's not your responsibility really, to actually look at the whole project in a full picture, because that's the project manager's role to be able to manage that project. So the project manager will identify if there's any problem or any risk or any issue, and it's the responsibility of the project manager to manage that. to make sure that problem is being addressed. But if it's something that is actually having impact or maybe impacting your requirements, then you need to raise that with your project manager as an issue or a risk. Then that will be addressed or through proper channel of having probably maybe project meeting, or maybe raise that in the, if you have a red log or something, then you need to discuss that with your project manager. So if you discover any problem, so you need to address that with your project manager, because that's the reason why that project manager is there for, to be able to manage the project. So analyst role is different from software tester. Yes, there is different. So it now depends on what you want to do. So it's different role. Yeah. So because as a BA, you are the one that document the requirements. So, and the software tester are just there to test the system or the solution, or depending on what the project is all about. So their testing is for the QA purpose, but not to gather the requirement. So it's the responsibility of the BA to gather the requirements of what they need to build, of the system that needs to be built before the software tester can actually carry out their own work. You've seen hybrid position of tester gathering requirement donor. Yes, you could see, like I said last week as well, you could see some rule out there that says you need to have maybe project manager and a BA role. It's just like buy one get one free. so definitely you have different skills and competencies for that. You know, a BA role is different from a project manager role. It's just that some organizations prefer to, you know, probably sometimes to save costs. Like I would say most times just to save costs. So they want somebody that have project manager experience and a BA role. So that means they're still paying you the same money for, you know, for the two roles that you're carrying out. So that's the essence. So they could say a BA and that has a maybe as a tester as well. Although most jobs, they will say they want somebody that can write test cases. It's just that some, like the project I'm working on at the moment, I've been writing the test cases as well, and I'm still going to, you know, do some other things as well. So it's just that it's give you, if that opportunity comes or the requirements comes that you need to document that requirement, that you are able to do it. They don't need to go and look for somewhere somebody else outside and say, oh, tester, come and write the test cases. And it's also if you have a testing experience, even if a tester, like for example, if like the tester, the QA, or if they write any requirements for me on the requirements that I've submitted or any system or solution, what I do, I review those test cases and I could identify that, oh, they are missing some test cases in there. And the only reason I could identify it is because I have that testing experience. Like I can write test cases and I know what they need to be testing. And because I've written the requirements, so I'm able to identify any gaps in their test cases. I could. So, but it's not necessary that you have to test all the system, that you have to write all the test cases. That's not really ideal, but they could say that's what you need to do. So it now depends on what you want to do. If you want to take the job, fine. But personally, I would say it's good if you have that experience, because it will help you. Even when you are carrying out the UAT, because as a BA, you will be leading the UAT session as well most times. So you can say, oh, that's actually right. That's actually, you need to test it. Can you test this for me? Can you test it? Can you demo this? You know, you can, it's good for you to have that experience if you can, but it's not mandatory, but it's always good if you have. I think if there's no other question, thank you for listening. We'll see you next week. Yeah, thank you. Bye.